Today we are going to be talking about the junior year. This is our counselors are joining us today. We have Ms. Shoopman and Ms. Ellis with us. And oops, hold on. So they've been doing presentations to the students and to the parents, and then following up with our Thursday morning parent meeting to answer any additional questions. So this is actually the final class that we're doing, because we've already, well, we did freshmen and sophomores together, and then we did seniors, and now it is the juniors' turn. So I'm going to turn it over to our two counselors, and then anytime parents, if you want to put anything in the chat, it's not a very big group today, so you can also, just raise your hand and ask a question like out loud if you want to, but if you prefer not to do that, please feel free to put any questions you have in the chat. Okay, all right, go ahead, Ms. Shoopman and Ms. Ellis.
Thank you. So Ms. Ellis, would you like to introduce yourself while I work on sharing my screen?
Yeah, sure. Good morning, everyone. My name is Ms. Ellis. I work with students in the Alpha SP to Z, so last part of the Alpha. And welcome and thank you for joining us.
Wonderful. And I'm Ms. Shoopman. I'm the head counselor, and I work with students whose last names are DU through LED. And so our junior night, so just to kind of go through the things that we've done so far with juniors, about a month and a half ago, we met with our juniors and we walked them through some of the basics, the graduation requirements, the college requirements, different grading periods, some of the important resources that are available to support them, upcoming events. And then we also had them do a career and a college research task. And so that was through Naviance. And so that was done again about a month ago, 6 weeks ago. And then Tuesday night, we had the information night for students and parents where we were able to go a little bit more in depth into graduation, college, and career. And so what is up on my screen is the presentation from that night. And if anyone wants access quickly to the link, I also put it in the chat box. And so just to quickly show you the agenda from the night, we wanted to make sure, again, they knew who their counselor is, the different marking periods so they understand when they receive grades and which grades are permanent, the graduation and college requirements, all of the different education and career pathways that they can choose from, AP exams, what are they for, when to take them, and what are the advantages to AP, SAT and ACT updates, and I'll talk about that in just a second, to-do list for juniors, what they should be doing, how parents can support them, important resources and upcoming events. And so junior year is actually the year that we meet with them most heavily. So we're also going to have another information night in spring, and that's going to be heavily focused on college. And so for our students who are applying to a four-year college, there's an awful lot of tasks to do next year. And so we meet with them at the end of the year to make sure they know what those tasks are, what they should be doing over the summer to be best prepared for that senior year. And just the different supports that are available to them. So that was our agenda. One challenge for Ms. Ellis and I is that so much is changing for our juniors. And so with the pandemic, there are some significant changes. For example, no ability to do large scale testing right now for like SAT and ACT. And so colleges are still figuring out for this class how they're going to handle that. So they've already made decisions for seniors, but for juniors, they felt it was a little premature for certain systems to have already decided. And so it was an interesting task for Ms. Ellis and I to try and present on so much pending. So we did our best, but that spring parent or information night is definitely going to be where most of those final decisions will be revealed. And anytime we learn before, we'll definitely share that. And so I'm going to go ahead and open and see what came up in the chat. Community college. So that's a great question. So the student or the parent is asking about transfer options for students who go to the community college. Do all community colleges have an equal number of transfer chances, basically? Would it be more advantageous to go to one versus another? And so the answer is that they don't give any special weight necessarily to one over the other in our local area. The things that they look at, obviously, they're going to look at the student's performance in community college. And so, did they take all of the transfer classes they needed? What was their GPA in those transfer classes? And then one thing they really heavily look at a lot of the more impacted campuses is, did they prepare for their major? And so a student who has done that, they've taken the right classes, they've prepared for their major, and they have a solid GPA, would have equal chance of transfer from one community college or another. And so they don't give more weight to one versus another community college. They look to see what has the student accomplished and have they met all those requirements for their major. So that's a great question. I think that there are certain areas that might, so that's something that students or parents do look at is, I guess both, is there a high transfer rate from a certain campus? And so there are some campuses that do have a higher transfer rate. That doesn't mean that other students can't transfer from there. It would be kind of like looking at the graduation rate from one East Side school to another. They might differ. It doesn't mean that you don't have a chance at graduating at one school versus another, but there are other factors. So there are a more affluent area might have a higher transfer rate because those families might have had greater resources. And so you might notice that some do have higher transfer rates, but it's not because the student couldn't have transferred from any of those campuses. It's usually those other factors in the community that might change those transfer rates. And so Ms. Ellis, did you want to add anything to that?
I would just add that the TAG program is available at all the local community colleges where it stands for Transfer Admission Guarantee.
Mhm.
And so that's basically a program where if the student takes a set of courses and maintains a required GPA, then they are guaranteed admission to a UC campus that they choose. And so I know a lot of people that do that program so that they can go to a UC out of a community college. And typically students would take 2 to 3 years at the community college, and then they would be able to complete the tag and then go to the UC. So
That's a great point. So
really good program.
I will put that link in here as well. You'll see that some campuses don't do a tag. And so for like Berkeley, LA, there's certain campuses, San Diego, that they have such a high volume of applicants that they don't do a guarantee. You know, your chances are still, you know, very, very good if you've done well in your community college, you took all those major prep classes. So it doesn't mean that you can't get into those campuses, but they are so heavily impacted with the number of applicants that they won't necessarily be able to guarantee. But like Ms. Ellis said, there's a lot of campuses that do have guarantees. And so this is a link that I put in the chat. So if you want to refer to it, and CSUs also have those transfer agreements with campuses. And so I think one thing that's really important, if you go to a community college, it's very important that they meet with the counselor and they don't try and map out their own plan. And so most of my students that say they ended up at a community college for a long time, it had to do with the fact that they, sometimes didn't pass classes, sometimes they went part-time, or they didn't meet with their counselor. And so they had requirements that they didn't put in early enough into their schedule, which delayed their progress towards meeting those transfer requirements. So if they go to a community college, again, have them meet, frequently and early with a counselor to make sure they're taking the right classes, not only to transfer, but to transfer into that major, because those will be different than just the general ed requirements they have. So that's a great question. I don't see.
Jill, a question came,
yeah.
Actually privately to me, but it was a question about a student who's now a junior needing to make up a class, specifically biology, and asking when the student would make up the class. My understanding is that biology is not actually, even though we have all freshmen take biology specifically is not a graduation requirement. So if they take a life science later on, that counts as the life, because it's the life science that's a graduation requirement. They may not necessarily have to make up biology. Is that correct?
That is correct. And so I think the best thing to do would be to reach out to the assigned counselor and have them review the transcript to see what they're missing. For example, a lot of our students who maybe miss a semester or maybe the whole year of biology they don't pass, they might actually fix that by taking forensic science later on, because forensic science can meet either the life science or the physical science requirement. And so that's absolutely correct. You don't necessarily have to repeat biology. You just need to make sure that you have a year of a biological, or sometimes called life science. And so I would reach out to the assigned counselor just to kind of see the progression of science classes they've done so far, to see if they're still really missing that, or has one of their other classes, physiology, like I said, forensics, is that going to meet that requirement? So again, reach out to the assigned counselor. We're happy to help you with that. And I think something else came up, let's see, for previous years, about what percentage of seniors take AP government, microeconomics versus regular government. for students taking the AP track, are there 2 AP exams for the one class? Do you fulfill UC? Okay, why don't I start with that first part? Trying to remember, I think there are currently 2 sections of AP Government and Econ this year, which would be, roughly 70 students or so. It really varies by year. And so, if you look at a senior class, there's about 500 students. And then again, right now, I believe, and Ms. Davis, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I believe there are 2 sections, which would be about 70 of 500. And so I think one thing that becomes challenging, in sophomore year, they kind of flood that world history because of the fact it's one of the first opportunities to take AP. And so they don't really have many other choices. They're excited to take an AP class. Hopefully they're excited about world history, but not always. And so that tends to be very heavily AP versus regular in that sophomore year. As they become juniors and seniors, there's a lot of competition for those AP classes. There's only so much time in your schedule and time in your homework load for AP. And so sometimes they'll make the choice to, forego the AP Government and Econ because maybe they're finally made it to AP Math, maybe they're in AP Calculus, or they're in an AP Science that takes up, a lot of their time. So it does go down, dwindle a little bit from initially the world history because of the fact that they're, starting to qualify for more and more in different subject areas, and they have to pick and choose. And then in terms of the exam portion, yes, it is 2 separate exams. And so for government, that would be a separate exam from the microeconomics. And then what I do encourage students to do is to also look into the college campuses policy, because I have seen on occasion where there's actually 2 AP economics, there's macro and micro, and the one that we offer is micro. And there are some college campuses that only give credit if students do both. And so you might want to check into that before, students, if they already pretty much know where they're going by senior year, they might want to not take an AP exam if they find out they're not getting credit for it at their college. Sometimes they still do, but it would be something worth investigating, especially if they are paying full price. So definitely 2 different exams, government and microeconomics, but then within economics, again, there are 2 separate exams, and check the college's policy to see whether or not they needed both, which they may have felt confident self-studying and taking or not before making the decision to sign up. So feel free to unmute yourself if that brings up a question that you need to clarify.
Well, and then the last part of this was, when do juniors just have to decide on the classes that they're going to take in their senior year?
Okay, that's a great question. And so we are actually going to start the scheduling process either late November or early December. We're not exactly sure on the timeline just yet. And so that's where students are going to meet with their counselor, have a presentation, start making those decisions, but that's basically a rough draft. And so they'll pick their classes at that time. And then when we come back after the break in January, February, that's where counselors will be inputting their schedule into the main system. In the past, we've been able to meet with them one-on-one to review their schedule. That's something we're still trying to figure out if we can do during distance learning, but we will make ourselves available to answer their questions regardless. And so once we have their schedules in the system, that's where we will usually send them a reminder of what they've signed up for and deadline to make changes if they would like to make changes. And so usually their change deadline comes around March, just to give us some time to plan. And so it's quite a ways away before they're going to need to make those commitments. And then after that time, it really depends on the year. I know this year in summer, we weren't able to make quite as many changes planning for distance learning. But this year, again, the process will start end of November, early December to start the planning. And then the change deadline could come sometime in spring. And it would be heavily advertised, so students and parents would know. We'd also have an AP information night like we do annually. So if students have any questions about AP, that would be a great time to get those answered. So they could safely commit to an AP class when we meet with them November, December, then get information from AP night and change their mind by the deadline that we set in spring. So great question. So anyone else like to pop a question in there? And, we talked about it briefly, again, with testing, because that becomes a big part of it. Do they need to take the ACT or SAT is something that, students are really concerned with. Again, right now, we don't have a way. So for AP exams, College Board is the company. They created a virtual test for AP. They've not yet come up with a virtual alternative for SAT. And so because we can't safely bring them together in large groups, there's no current plan to be able to offer the PSAT, which is the practice test. And we really don't have a way of knowing about the SAT. You know, I wish I had a way to figure out what's going to be happening in our lives come March and, you know, even into the summer. But because we don't have a way of knowing, again, that's where I'm saying, please stay tuned. We will communicate with students and parents through School Loop excessively once we do have those answers. But for right now, there's no local way for them to take these exams. And so that's why colleges are, you know, pretty much talking about waiving them. So for the UC system, no matter what, they've already said juniors are not required to take the test. The CSU system has not given a final answer, but I think is going to lean in that direction because they're having limited practice time and then limited time to test. So I have a feeling the CSUs and UCs are not going to make them mandatory. I actually should say I already know the UCs are not going to make them mandatory. One thing that students know is that sometimes the UCs say it's not mandatory, but if you have a test score you would like to show us, that we may take that into consideration. That's the question mark for the UC system. So I think the best thing I can tell students to do is, you know, just take a deep breath. There's really nothing they can do right now because it's not safe in our local area and there's no virtual alternative. So for right now, just take a breath and know that counselors are going to keep you up to date as soon as we know more, but that chances are they're not going to be held accountable for these exams for our local systems. So that's something that kind of came up heavily in questions the other night. So anyone else have a question they'd like to put in chat? Or
I guess
yeah.
Bill, I have a question. What would you guys recommend that, you know, juniors, I mean, I know I think a lot of times, I think that the junior year is overall probably the most stressful, heavy of all of the years in high school. I mean, I think it's compared to like the first semester of senior year, I think is also very stressful.
Sure.
But what do you recommend that juniors like really like prioritize or do? What should they be doing right now when thinking about colleges and like how should they, because there's so many colleges out there, what should they really be doing right now?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So I feel like if they don't feel a little stress in their junior year, they're not doing it right. I know that a lot of my seniors wish they had done more junior year. You know, if they hadn't done any college research or college visits, they're definitely regretting it senior year. And so junior year is the year to make sure that you don't put yourself into a stressful, difficult senior year situation. So my hope is that when they hit senior year, they're ready to roll. They already have an idea where they're applying. They already have a rough idea what they're going to put as their major based on what they think they're leaning toward for career, or they know they have absolutely no decision on that and want to go undecided or undeclared. So junior year is really that year that I hope they do all that research so that by the end of it and by the time that senior year starts, they feel like they have a plan. They're not just starting to think about these things. And so things that juniors should do, obviously you should start researching careers and researching colleges. And that was a big part of what we did on Naviance. And so I'm going to skip to this slide for just a second. So students and for parents, what I would encourage you to do, I would encourage you to talk to your junior, or if you happen to not have a junior, but you're on here, talk to your student because there was a task for each grade level. And so on Naviance, it's a tool that you can use for course planning, career exploration, and college research. And so for our juniors, they did a career interest test this year. And so as a parent, you could ask them, what were your results from your career interest test? They also did a college super match. And so they had to put in all the different parameters, and I'll go ahead and switch to the next screen. So again, they did an interest test. They did a college super match, which is where they put in all of their, you know, must-haves and nice to haves for a college in terms of location. Do they need to stay in California? Does it need to be a large school or small school? Are there any activities specifically that you need to have there? Is there a specific major they need to have? So they put in all their parameters, and then it gave them a list of colleges to consider. And so my hope is that our juniors have shown you this. I highly doubt it because they're teenagers. And so please ask them if they would be willing to show you what they have in Naviance. And then last year they learned about their strengths in terms of career, and the year before the personality in terms of their career. So this would be a great thing as a parent to sit down and say, hey, can we go over your Naviance? I'd love to see what you're interested in doing. I'd love to see all of your different career results, to see based on your personality, your strengths, and your interests, what might be a good match. So this would be something that would be a good conversation starter for parents, is these different career tests in Naviance. And then again, for the super match, it's the time where they're starting to put in those must-haves and nice-to-haves to create that list of colleges to then explore further. So my hope is this year, again, they're exploring who they are as a person and what career might be satisfying for them, that they are taking the time to create a list of colleges, or if they're considering military, research the military, or whatever their post-high school plan is. And, if they can, they're taking college visit. They're doing the college visits, although that's really hard during a pandemic. Some are still able to do it safely. If they're not, they can do virtual visits to the campuses. And so that's my hope, that they're doing that this year. We gave in the presentation a list of to-dos for juniors. And so there's quite an extensive list, because we also want them to be compiling a list of their extracurricular activities, because that's going to be something they report on their college apps. They do have to make sure they're keeping their grades strong junior year, because for our UC and our CSU system, they don't look at 9th grade, and they won't have any senior year grades when they make their initial decision. So it really comes down to how did they perform in 10th and 11th grade. So I told them that 11th grade is 50% of the GPA they're going to look at. And so keeping those grades strong, keeping those lists of activities for their colleges, doing career and college research, that would be what they want to do little by little this year, so that next year they're not feeling so stressed. And again, if they come to our night in spring, our college information night, that's where we will tell them what to do during the summer to take some of the stress off senior year as well, like starting those college essays. They start, some of the college applications even open in the summer, so they can start putting in some of that information. And so those are things that we would recommend that they do this year, so that next year isn't such a stressful time.
Oh, there was a question that came in about Naviance.
Oh, sure.
So the parents saying it's a resource to help students. However, I heard students don't think it's helpful because the result of their career options show up as bus driver, worker in farmer industry, etc. Is the school aware of this or heard about what the students reported about Naviance?
So I'm thinking what they might be talking about is, so, obviously Naviance is designed for everybody. And so it's designed for, people who might be looking at going in and getting a college degree all the way up to a graduate degree. Some people who might be looking at going straight into career right after high school. So for example, electrician, plumber, get that training right after high school. So it's going to have a wide range of different careers. So gosh, I wonder if I can show. So it depends on where they're looking. So in my results when I did it, and I've seen other students' results, it has different degrees of now it's afraid it's going to take me too long to get to that screen. Basically what it does is when you finish the test, it will have minimal preparation after high school and a list of careers, all the way down to extensive preparation in after high school and a list of careers. So if my interest is working with people, there's going to be some careers that are recommended for me that are going to require very little education and training after high school. And then as I continue down the list, it's going to get all the way to, if I went on all the way up to getting a doctoral degree, here are my options for what I could do working with people and being social after high school. So I'm thinking that the student is saying one area that they're seeing, but they're not really being completely upfront with what all is available. Like as they scroll down to that extensive training, it should have, doctor, attorney, all these other things that are going to require a large amount of time in school after high school. So that's my best guess of what they're doing, is they're probably just seeing the results pop up and they're not really going further into them, realizing that they start from no education and training, go all the way to extensive education and training. That is my guess.
Yeah.
If that is not what they're seeing, they can always email me. If they're only getting results like that, please have them email me, but I haven't seen that before. I'm thinking they're just not scrolling.
Yeah, I would piggyback on that. And because I've taken these surveys myself too. And, you know, it's interesting with the career survey, like my current career did not come up as an option. And I'm very happy with my career, and I tend to think I'm a little bit successful with it. So I think that that's actually a really good reason, you know, and like why you want to talk to your kids about this and like look at what their results were and like talk to them about it, because, you know, it doesn't necessarily mean that that's what they have to do. You know, I think the career survey is helpful. I personally, like of all of the surveys, I think the ones about personality and like interests are actually more helpful, because then, you know, because really, I think all of us, when we're talking about a career, you want to have a career in something that interests you and that excites you and that you can be passionate about. And there's a wide range of that. And I think that really, you know, because I know in conversations with my daughter, who's a senior this year, you know, she gets really bogged down. Like, I have no idea what I want to do with my life. Like, I don't know what I want to be. And I'm like, well, that's okay. Like, when you go to college, like, what sounds interesting? Like, that's, so, you know, when you go to college, you have that freedom to like start taking classes that are more interesting to you. And so what, you know, let's worry about the career later. Let's like focus on like what sounds interesting and like what schools like have things that like sound attractive to you.
Definitely.
Oh, and then
Yeah.
I was just gonna add that for one of the career tests or one of the surveys that they do, it does give them their Holland interest code. And that's I can even share my screen. I feel like this is super helpful because it gives them different career clusters. So it like shows different like related occupations based on their interests, and then it shows their interest code that has to do with their interests and their personality, and then it will show like related majors and then also related career pathways. So I can share my screen because I have mine up. Let me see, or I don't know. Am I able to share?
Well, Jill has to stop sharing.
Oh, yeah. And I put, so that one that she's referring to is the career test Do What You Are, which they did in 9th grade. So let me do, did I pause sharing? Is that what you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Stop sharing, and then she can share.
Okay, cool. So this is the one that I was referring to, where it shows the careers and the clusters, and then it has all this information. There's an overview, and then they go over the Holland code, which was actually aligned perfectly with me and my career I've chosen. But then it goes to show related occupations, related majors, and then the pathway to get there. And then there's also these other tabs for knowledge and skills, activities that you might commonly do in those jobs, and then wages. And this is Do What You Are, right?
And then Jill and Nicole, if a kid, like you said, they took them this in the 9th grade. If a kid wanted to redo it, you guys can reset it, right? I think that's an option. I think that's a feature that the counselor can reset and let a student redo a quiz.
Does Jill know the
I
answer?
might have promised something that is not possible.
Yeah. Jill, do you know if they were able to reset it? Oh, did you hear?
I wonder if her internet went out. I think she may redo it. She dropped out.
Yeah, I think she probably was her internet.
Yeah, so she'll come back. But we had another question from the junior status letter. I see my kid still needs 10 credits to fulfill the elective requirement and 10 credits for the social science category. What counts as an elective class? Will AP Physics 2 or AP Statistics count? What category will the AP US Government and Microeconomics count? Social science or elective?
Sorry, can you repeat the question again? I was like trying to follow along and see if it was in the chat.
We'll say it's because it's multiple parts. So in the junior status letter, the student still needs 10 credits to fill the elective. So what will count is that? Let's take that part first.
For the elective. Okay, so I would say to like during the junior year, that elective count is going to be relatively low. So to not worry so much about that. But for the elective, that's going to be like, an additional year past the minimum requirement of math, of science, of trying to think of what else, of a language other than English is going to count for that.
Yeah,
So
so
anything
basically
past
to
the minimum.
sum up, like anytime you get past the graduation requirements. So in East Side, the kids only need 2 years of math to graduate from high school. Anything beyond 2 years of math goes to elective. You only need 2 years of science to graduate from high school. Anything beyond that goes to elective. So the elective credits, like, are actually really easy to get. Like it's as long as they have a full schedule and they're not just taking like 3 or 4 classes, which they never would be able to because they're not allowed to do that. They're going to get their elective credits. Like you honestly never have to worry unless they are failing classes and have to make up credits. That's the only time where you have to really kind of worry about this. But if your student's passing everything, then it's going to be fine. And then they also ask about the 10 credits for the social science category. And so I can go ahead and like, yes, the AP government and economics counts. Basically the 10 credits of social science is government and economics their senior year, which they automatically have to take because those are required for graduation. And yes, the AP versions of that will count and those satisfy the graduation requirements.
What counts as an elective class? Okay, so we covered that.
And then we have my junior hasn't taken an AP class. However, he was planning to take one his senior year. Since he won't be done in time when he applies for the CSU UC in November, when or how do they see the AP grade?
So when he goes to fill out his application for the CSU and UC, he's going to report the classes that he's currently have in progress. And then also they have a portion where they put the ones that are going to be planned to take in their spring semester of senior year. So that's how the UC and CSU will be able to see, if he's planning on taking a rigorous schedule, and like how are they challenging themselves in their senior year based off of what they put for like in progress and plan courses. And then how do they see the AP grade? So so for UCs and CSUs, they require a final official transcript after the senior year ends. So like usually by June or July after senior year. And so that's when, for instance, if the student just has gotten accepted conditionally to UCLA, and then they decide that they accept that admissions offer, then they're going to be required at the end of their senior year to request an official transcript to be sent from Piedmont Hills to the school that they're going to go to. So to UCLA, if that was the school the student is committing to. And then that's how they would see the AP grade for the 2 semesters in senior year. Because that final transcript has all of the students' coursework from all of high school.
Hi, I'm sorry about that. I'm back. My Wi-Fi dropped for a few minutes, and so I hope I didn't miss anything huge. Miss Ellis, is there anything that I need to respond to before we go to the next?
I think we're good with the last 2 questions, and then now moving on to the last one that just came in.
Yeah, and this is about senior portraits and pandemic procedures. There's really not an alternative, unfortunately, because we have contracts with the photographers and so, legally we have to use the photographer, and like portraits, and that's what goes in the yearbook. I mean, you obviously, like, if you just want to have pictures of your kids from like the senior year, like, you can do whatever you want. But for what goes in the yearbook, we do have contracts. And so we have to, use those pictures. What I would say, like, because I just went through this with my own daughter. Like I said, she's a senior. We just did her senior portraits a couple of weeks ago. And granted, I live up on the peninsula, and so I wasn't, the studio I went to was up in San Carlos. But they were, I mean, honestly, I was impressed with the safety protocols that they had. That was really strict about the appointment time, and that there was only so many people in there. We were never like closer than 6 feet away from anybody. So, and we had to wear masks the whole time. Obviously, she did take off her mask just for the picture, but like only for the picture time. And then the photographer was wearing a mask, and the photographer, I would say, because they used a zoom lens, the photographer was probably 10 feet away from her. And yeah, they have to wear the drape thing. My daughter did say it smelled like BO, so I get it. So I get it. I would just call the company and just say, your concerns about that. I know it's not ideal, but I guess short answer, with the contract that we have with them, we do have to use the pictures from the studio for the yearbook. Okay.
Is it possible to register for the AP testing without going on campus, mail and check?
So we do need the forms filled out. I think if you have a really big concern, email Ms. Pereira, who is our APED. She is the one that's in charge of AP testing. Unfortunately, our district can be very behind the times. And I really wish there was a way to like do an online payment and like use a credit card and stuff, because really it's 2020 and we live in the Silicon Valley, and you would think that these things would be possible, but our district doesn't have those systems set up, unfortunately. So I would say if you have a real concern about coming on campus, talk to Ms. Pereira. I will say that the lines, like there have not been lines. I know how teenagers are, and so as we get later in October to when the window's closing, then it might start getting more crowded. But like this week, it's like it's not crowded. So the earlier you do it, the less likely there is to be any sort of other people around. And then there's a question about, is this presentation available for the parents for what you guys did on Tuesday? And yes, you guys post all that on the website. Do you want to show them where they could find that?
Yes, and so let me show you a couple of things here. Sorry about that. So on our website, under the counseling tab, we have all of our information. And if you scroll all the way down to where it says presentations, you will see all of the presentations that we've had so far. So the top has the student presentations. The middle is more parent, which was parent and student. We invited students as well. And then we have for our seniors college application presentations. So for 11th grade, if that's where your child's at, it would be the 11th grade student presentation, and then 11th grade parent night. We have both the slides that I put in chat, and then we have the video from that night here. And so any upcoming presentations are also listed on the schedule. So we always try and update this as soon as we have a presentation. So if you couldn't go or you just want to refer back, because one thing, we have a lot of links within our presentation for you to click on. So our hope is you're going to keep referring back to it and clicking on those links. And I'm a visual learner, so I like to see. And so what I really quickly going to show you is earlier when someone was asking about like the career results for some of these, maybe showing careers that didn't seem to be a good match for the student. I think it's just a good conversation starter, but I want to show you when they're done for junior year doing their interest profiler, it tells them their top interests. So the higher the number, the more that is an interest of theirs, the lower obviously not. And then it shows matching careers. And so once they get to the matching careers, it shows them what are careers, if this is my interest, what are careers that require little or no preparation, like cashier would be just on the job training, all the way down if they keep scrolling to extensive preparation. And so that would be more if you want to be a pharmacist or statistician or investment fund manager. So there's a lot that require a great deal. And if they click on the little dot next to the amount of training, it explains what do they mean by extensive preparation. So this one would require probably a graduate degree. Some of these might be 4-year, 2-year degrees, all the way down to if a student was not attending college after high school, what would match their interests with little or no additional academic preparation. And so I'm thinking what's happening with a lot of our students is it pops up, they look at this first screen and they don't necessarily hit show more to continue on. So that's probably where that student stopped and why they felt that the careers that were offered weren't quite matching their interests. So I just wanted to show you that quickly because I know for me, if I see it, I understand it better than if I hear it. And so anything else that has come up in the chat? Yeah.
Yeah, there was we were wondering if students are like, if they want to go back and review the surveys that they took in like freshman year, is there a way for the counselors to reset on their Naviance account so they can like redo those surveys?
Yeah, so we can reset for them. I think there's only one that they don't let us reset. So they let us reset, I believe, your personality one and your interest one. I think they felt your strengths are your strengths. And so, yes, we can reset for them. But so basically the information is sitting in there for them right now. So if they don't remember the results they got from their personality test and do what you are in 9th grade, it's still there for them. If they want us to reset any because maybe they didn't take it as seriously in the 9th grade or they just feel they've matured a lot, absolutely, we can reset most of those exams for them to redo. And again, like we were saying, this is just kind of like a starting point to have conversations. I think mine said I should be a priest. And so I'm not a priest, but you know what? I like to help other people and work through their problems. So I think it's just looking for, when I was talking to one of my seniors, looking for trends. If over and over I'm being recommended for jobs that are helping others, then that's a trend I'm going to notice. That's something that is matching my personality, part of my strengths, and something I'm interested in. Well, maybe I need to really consider, why is it continuing to point me in the same direction each time? Doesn't mean students have to choose that. And when they're in Naviance, they can do career research on any career. So it doesn't have to be something that was recommended to them. And so it's just kind of a good way to start having some self-exploration, and as a family to start having conversations of what would be a satisfying career for them after, where they would find success and they would be, feeling fulfilled. And so, yes, they can refer back. Absolutely. So let's see, anything else coming up in chat?
No.
So many things open. There's the chat. Okay. Like I said, it was definitely an interesting presentation for us to do kind of as wait and see. So please encourage your juniors, make sure they're reading their email, because distance learning, sometimes it's been hard to communicate with them. So have them make sure they're monitoring their email carefully, as that's how we'll give them those updates.
So I think, Jill, maybe, and this didn't come up, but well, I can hear, well, there is a question about a student wants to take an SAT subject Math 2 exam. Does the student have to register for that on their own?
Yes. And so for the SAT subject test, that's never been done through Piedmont Hill. So yes, they would register for any subject tests on their own. And then again, I think for the reasoning test, the one that is the standard exam that has the reading, the writing, and the math, at this time, we don't have a plan for that because of the concerns with the pandemic. And so if that changes, then if that changes, we'll let you know. But we have never been able to offer subject tests for our students on our campus. So yes, they would register on College Board for that. College Board shows just how backed up a lot of these testing facilities are. So for a lot of our students who do try and register, they're probably going to find very long, wait lists to get into some of these exams. And that's why, again, the colleges are going to have to be flexible and not make them mandatory. So somebody is asking, I haven't received my junior status letter. Should I have it already by now? You should have it, I would say, within the next several days. And so it was supposed to arrive in time for our parent night. So it's funny because for our seniors, we sent it early. and many of them lost it. So on the parent night, we tell them to pull it out, and I just got flooded with emails, send it again, send it again. So for our juniors, we decided, okay, we're not going to send it out too early because they'll lose it by the time of the night. And then there was a delay in the mailroom and it didn't come out in time. So it was like, darn, you know, we tried to fix a problem and created a new one. And so it should be in your hand, I'd say by early next week at the absolute latest. And so if you don't have it, and especially if there's any concern that we may have the wrong address, please reach out to the assigned counselor. But please give us a tiny bit longer so that, you know, we don't have too many people reaching out. So give it until early next week and then reach out to the assigned counselor if you haven't received it. They will verify your address and let you know what to do if it's incorrect in our system. If it is correct and it just somehow has been lost in the mail, they can give you a copy. That's a great question. Not really, unfortunately. So what we do, because of the fact that there's so many of them to only, you know, a few of us, will we actually correct their college essay? No. What we will do, however, is we will have presentations that walk them through strategies with their college essay. And so we will make sure that they have the support they need to know what to include, how to write it, what types of information maybe not to include in their essay. They luckily usually have it as an assignment, the one for the UC system, in their English class. So not all English classes, but most have the personal insight questions, which is what the essay for the UC system is called. There's 4 different choices out of 8. For the personal insight questions, oftentimes English teachers will have that as an assignment, and they will, you know, help give feedback and correct. For us, we will have workshops to help them have the general information. I am not an English teacher, so I have no business doing grammatical corrections. But in terms of reading each individual student's essays, I wish we had the time to do that. Unfortunately, though, with so many students to so few of us, you know, we don't have time to do that individual review of their essay. But good question.
We have the upcoming PIQ workshop on Friday, tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
What time is that at again?
I can check and see. The only thing is, though, that's for seniors. And so,
yeah, sorry.
Yeah, oh, no problem. So that's a great point, because it will be available to them. So if you have a senior, let me tell you, oh, actually, I don't know if it would be on this particular calendar. Let me look here. So on the presentation screen that I showed you earlier, all of our presentations where you click on schedule, that is one of the ones listed, is the personal insight questions. So the reason that it's not that a junior can't attend, they are limited in terms of capacity. So I don't want to have juniors flooded and then not have enough room for all the seniors that they invited. But the bigger reason for why we don't usually encourage students to go to these early is that they could potentially change. So if students were to go to college application workshops a year too early, they might get, you know, false information, because each year the admissions policies, procedures, essays could change. And that's why the counselors go to workshops at the start of student senior year to make sure we give them the most up-to-date information. So we went to workshops in September to make sure our current seniors knew in October exactly what they needed to do. And so for our juniors, they will have those same supports next year. So at the bottom here, let me see if it's not letting me scroll. Hopefully you guys can see. There we go. UC Personal Insight Question Workshop. Students can pre-register for that. Again, if you have a senior and you just happen to be one of our regulars that join, great. Please encourage them to enroll. If you have a younger student, I would probably wait on that, just because, again, they could potentially change and get some information that's going to be outdated by the time they're writing those essays. But yeah, there will be support like that, like these workshops, to walk them through how to do those essays. Any other questions pop up?
So I guess I just want to, because we are running towards the end, and, you know, I want to balance next week when we meet. Ms. Gunter is going to be back with me, and we're actually going to talk about academic peer pressure, which I think is a really important topic. But I want to frame it like, you know, one thing that kids that are juniors, they look to their senior year and they say like, oh, I want my senior year to be easy. And as, you know, like Ms. Shoopman said, you know, coming up in the next couple months, certainly before the end of the semester break, we're going to start talking about registering for classes for next year. I don't ever recommend that, students that just blow off and have that easy year where they're not taking challenging classes their senior year. Though you always have to weigh that with mental health and the pressures, and, because you don't want to be, there's always a balance. And so, things like, and looking at, I think that's where you have to weigh, like, what colleges are you considering, and are they really, really competitive? And that's when you probably do want to sign up for that 4th year of world language, and take an extra science class, certainly take a 4th year math. I think actually one thing that I would really, I think everybody needs to get in the habit and just mindset of taking that 4th year of math, I think is really, of my recommendations, probably the most important. I don't know, Ms. Ellis, Ms. Shoopman, if you have anything that you want to just plant some seeds to be thinking about as we move into their senior year.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. And looking back, I'm super glad that my parents made me take a 4th year of math, because when I went to college, I still had to take statistics for my major. And then, also for almost every major, if not all, you're going to need to go up to at least pre-calc. And so my senior year in high school, I took pre-calc, but because I was a psychology major, I didn't have to take calculus, but I did end up needing to take statistics. So looking back, I'm really glad that I just kept going with math in high school, and then went up to pre-calc in my senior year. And then when I got to college, I didn't have to worry about, having had a year off, and then now I need to take pre-calc or whatever math class my major required.
Definitely. And colleges recognize the importance, math tends to be kind of a use it or lose it subject. And so they recognize the single most, the single largest barrier to students earning their college degree was math. And so for that reason, they really push high schools to keep our students in for all 4 years. In fact, the CSU system is going to make a 4th year mandatory, but that's still, I think it's like 2025 or 2027. So it's a ways away. So it won't impact these students, but that's just how serious they are about that 4th year of math. Because again, they find that if students take that year off, they come in really, unprepared for what they have to do in college for their major. And I think that, like Ms. Davis was saying, you got to figure out where you're applying to make sure you know what's expected. But also, I think we're wanting students to find a good balance. So for like the UC system, for example, these are the different areas they consider when they're deciding who to admit. And I can put this in chat. One of the things they look at is the quality of their senior year schedule. And so some of my students think, oh, well, they're not looking at senior year, so I don't really need to be as concerned, because, they're looking at everything, basically, for the most part, 10th and 11th for GPA or 9th grade for coursework. Well, they also look at the classes you list for your senior year, and that's one of the areas that they use when they decide. And so we don't want students to put on the brakes senior year and not take challenging classes, because again, that's one of the things they're looking at is that senior year schedule. But we've had students do the opposite, where they completely flood their schedule with AP, trying to, look competitive for those colleges, but then they can't maintain those grades. And so when colleges admit a student, it is conditional. And one of the conditions is that they keep up their senior year grades. And so we just want to help students find that healthy balance. So challenge yourself, because colleges are looking at what you're enrolled in your senior year, but don't take on more than you can handle with, your extracurricular commitments, your college applications, and remember, your health. You got to prioritize your health. And so I think that's where parents can be so helpful for us, is helping them find that balance. And if you see them trying to sign up for something that is not reasonable and healthy and is going to cause that stress senior year, help have those important conversations and help them make more reasonable decisions.
Yeah, and I was just going to add that I do have some seniors who are feeling quite overwhelmed right now, because they're in a lot of AP courses, and at the same time, they're in extracurriculars, and they're also doing their college applications right now. And so they're definitely feeling stressed out and overwhelmed by all the different things that they're trying to balance and get done this fall.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And some of them, yeah.
I would say that senior year, that this is the point right now, mid-October of the senior year, where they are feeling the most stress. So as parents of juniors, just kind of keep that in the back of your mind that this time next year, they're going to be super stressed. And it's okay. The thing about senior year is once they get past, you know, I would say that Christmas break, you know, college applications are in at that point, then it's kind of, and that's where the senioritis comes in, because it's just like such a, like a, whew, all the pressure's gone. And then they just kind of like, oh, well, it's all over. And so they want to just, you know, stop doing anything. But the senior year is an interesting contrast between like the first part of the senior year and all of the pressure and the stress. And then it does go away. It ends. So.
Definitely.
But I want to thank our two counselors that joined us today. I want to, well, I can answer this last question that just popped in the chat. Go to the book room. The book room hours are posted on the website. We can check out books. So, you know, we started with the online textbooks at the start of the year, but now they can come and get any textbook they want. They just have to go to the book room when the book room is open, and those hours are posted on our website. Okay. Thank you guys. And parents, like I said, I gave you a little preview. Next week, we're going to be talking about academic peer pressure, which is a really great topic. It's one that we do every year, and there's always more. So even if you've heard it before, there's always more to add to it. So I hope that I see you next week. Okay. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Thanks. Bye.